let's talk about the career and bibliography of the legendary mangaka Naoki Urasawa. Stay tuned. So Naoki Urasawa is one of the most recognizable and most highly praised creators in the manga industry. He's not just successful commercially, but also critically, and I would say you'd have a hard time finding someone's list of favorite manga that doesn't include at least one of Urasawa's works. And it's well deserved because he is an amazing creator and without a doubt a master of this medium. Now, while in English we do have the majority of his works and a lot of his more popular titles available, there's a lot that is not available, has never been officially localized. And I wanted to go through his entire bibliography, including all of those titles, just kind of chronologically going through his career to give an idea of what Urasawa's professional career has been like. So in this video, basically the way this is going to be formatted, I'm going to be talking about his career from the very beginning all the way up until now. And for any of the stuff that we do have available in English, I will be showing those, my personal copies of those volumes and just kind of narrate about those titles while I'm showing them off. So let's go ahead and start back when Urasawa's career began in the early 80s. Urasawa's career began when he was visiting Shogakukan because he was applying for a job with them, not on the creative side, but more on the business side. But he decided to bring some of his works with him, some of the manga that he had drawn, just out of curiosity of what their reaction to this would be. Now, the editor over at Weekly Shonen Sunday did not care for it at all, but the head editor from Big Comic Original saw this and thought that his work looked like something that would be more suited for Big Comic spirits. Eventually, he would submit a unpublished work titled Return for the 1982 New Manga Artist Award, and he would actually win. In the next year, 1983, Urasawa would meet Takashi Nagasaki, who would become a longtime editor and collaborator. After this, he would make his professional debut with a story called Beta, which was published in the Golgo 13 magazine. And then just a year later, in 1984, he would have his first short serialized work titled The Dancing Policeman, which, as the title suggests, is about a dancing policeman. There was only 7 chapters of this series, and it was collected into a single volume, though it has never been released in English. In 1985, Urasawa would then have his first major serialized work with Pineapple Army in Big Comic Original alongside writer Kazuya Kudo. This series was published until 1988, and it was collected across 8 volumes. And in the US, the series was published in Viz Media in 1988 across 10 single issues, which were later collected into a single paperback volume. The Viz editions also featured original cover artwork that evoked a style similar to Dave McKean, the artist that did the covers for Neil Gaiman's Sandman series, as well as the artwork for Grant Morrison's Batman Arkham Asylum graphic novel. The series would follow a Japanese-American named Jet Goshi, who is a former US Marine, Vietnam vet, and retired mercenary, who now makes his living by running a combat training facility in New York where he teaches everyone from the average salaryman to little girls. Unfortunately, nothing more has been published in English past those first 10 chapters. The series was only 8 volumes, so if it ever does get, resurrected, if you will, into English, I would hope that they would just do 4 2-in-1 volumes, similar to the Perfect Edition releases that we have of his series like 20th Century Boys and Monster. In 1986, while he was still working on Pineapple Army, Urasawa started to publish his first major solo work, Yawara. This romantic comedy sports series was published in Big Comic Spirits magazine until 1993 and was collected across a total of 29 volumes. The series was focused on a young judo prodigy whose grandfather basically forces her to train in judo so that she can eventually become a gold medalist at the 1992 Summer Olympics. Due to her grandfather's constant pressure, she initially hates the sport. However, she does come to appreciate it more as the series goes on and tends to learn why her grandfather loves it. The series would eventually be adapted into a live-action film as well as an anime series. Now, this is another work of Urasawa's that has never been released in English. It's never been officially localized, so this is one that I hope we can see in the future. And again, just like I said for Pineapple Army, I hope that we see this across 2-in-1 perfect editions with the oversized trim and everything, similar to what we've gotten from both Monster and 20th Century Boys. Though because it is an odd number of volumes, I would suppose that one of them would have to be a 3-in-1, similar to when Viz Media did the localization of Mitsuru Adachi's Cross Game. The first volume was a 3-in-1. In 1988, following the conclusion of Pineapple Army, Urasawa would then begin work on Master Keaton for Big Comic Original, and this was along with writer Hokusei Katsuhika. As Urasawa had still been working on Yawara at this time, he was not able to take on the full creative duties for this series, so he only provided the artwork. However, Katsuhika, which was a pseudonym for Hajime Kimura, who was a co-writer on Golgo 13, had ceased work on the series due to some apparent conflict that he had with Urasawa. So later parts of the series, Urasawa did wind up taking on the writing duties as well as the artistic duties. The series would run until 1994, and it was collected across 18 total volumes. It followed the character Taichi Hiraga Keaton, an insurance investigator who dreams of becoming an archaeological researcher. From October of 1998 to June of 2000, the series was then adapted into a 39-episode anime, and from 2012 to 2014, Urasawa and Takashi Nagasaki would return to the series for a sequel titled Master Keaton Remaster, which would be collected into a single volume. Back during the 90s, Viz Media had considered localizing the series. However, due to the poor sales of Pineapple Army, they were scared off, and the series would not be released in English until 2014. The first volume would be released in December of 2014, and the 12th and final of the Kanzenban volumes were released in 2017. So basically, each of the 12 volumes has about 1.5 volumes worth of material from the original 18-volume run. In 1993, Urasawa would then wrap up work on Yawara, and he would start another series in Big Comic Spirits titled Happy. Happy was another sports series which this time followed a teen tennis prodigy named Miyuki Umino. Miyuki basically has to succeed as a pro tennis player because her brother Iyasu had incurred an enormous debt which she is now responsible to pay back to some Yakuza loan sharks. And if she doesn't, then they're going to force her essentially to sell her body at a soapland. The manga was serialized until 1999, collected across 23 total volumes, and then in 2006 it would be adapted into 2 short live-action television films, but it's never had an anime adaptation. This is another of Urasawa's titles that have never been released in English. It's never been officially localized, not even partially. And so similar to Yawara, I do really hope that this one gets a 2-in-1 release, similar to all the Perfect editions. And again, similar to Yawara, this one would have to have at least one of those be a 3-in-1, since it does have an odd number of volumes. From 1994 until 2001, following the conclusion of Master Keaton, Urasawa would then start work on the multi-award winning series, which would become one of his most praised and recognized titles, Monster. Urasawa originally pitched the idea of Monster back in 1996. However, the editor that he pitched it to didn't believe that people would be very excited about a manga about the medical field. So instead, Urasawa would jokingly propose a story about women's judo, which would lead towards the series Yawara. The idea for the series was strongly based on the 1960s American television series The Fugitive, of which Urasawa was a huge fan. The series featured a doctor who was wrongly convicted of murder, searching for the real killer while on the run from the police. Monster would follow Dr. Kenzo Tenma, whose life enters turmoil after he becomes mixed up with one of his former patients, who's revealed to be a serial killer. The series would be adapted into a 74-episode anime series from 2004 to 2005, and then in 2006, Viz Media would begin to publish the 18-volume series in English as part of their editor's choice line. In 2014, they would then re-release the series across 9 2-in-1 Perfect editions. Viz also released the dubbed version of the anime, which was praised as one of the greatest dubs in recent memory at the time of its release. Once Happy concluded in 1999, Urasawa would then begin work on another of his most recognized and most praised manga, 20th Century Boys. The idea for 20th Century Boys actually came to Urasawa as he was relaxing in a bath after having sent the final chapter of Happy to his editor. A speech came on the TV from someone with the United Nations, which stated, "Without them, we would not have been able to reach the 21st century." And with that, Urasawa suddenly had an idea for this new series. While he wanted to relax and enjoy a break from the weekly serialization after concluding Happy, Urasawa knew that he needed to put this idea on paper and submit it as soon as possible because the end of the century was fast approaching. Working on both 20th Century Boys and Monster simultaneously actually led for Urasawa to be hospitalized due to exhaustion. However, the series would go on to become another of Urasawa's most praised works in his entire career. The series follows Kenji Endo, whose group of childhood friends notice that a cult leader known only as Friend, who is out to destroy the world, has ties to their childhood memories. The mystery slowly unravels across 3 time periods, leading towards the eventual revelation of who it truly is that's behind all of this. The series would end in 2006 with 22 total volumes, and in 2007 the sequel, 21st Century Boys, was launched, which would wrap up the story across 2 more volumes. While the series was never adapted into an anime, it was adapted into 3 live-action films that came out across 2008 and 2009, all directed by Yukihiko Tatsumi. The series was first released in English by Viz Media from 2009 to 2012. Basically, Viz had waited after they were finished publishing Monster, though they had actually licensed the series for release back in 2005. More recently, Viz has re-released the series across the 2-in-1 Perfect editions, similar in format to their re-release of Monster, and in 2010, Urasawa briefly revisited the world of 20th Century Boys for a comedic spin-off manga titled Ujiko Ujio Mangari Michi, which would follow 2 manga artists trying to produce a successful series. The spin-off would last for 8 chapters, and it was collected into a single volume, though it has never before been released in English. In 2003, Urasawa would begin work on the series Pluto, which means that there was actually a 2-year gap at this time where he was only working on a single series after Monster had concluded. That delay may have been due to the year that it took to negotiate for the rights to Osamu's original story that Pluto was based on. It was an adaptation of an Astro Boy story titled The Greatest Robot on Earth, wherein a robot detective from Europol, and I apologize if I mispronounce this because I'm not very good with German, who is named Gesicht, is investigating the string of robot murders. The targets of these murders seem to be the 7 greatest robots in the world, as well as humans who are connected to the international robot laws, which would grant robots equal rights. And in this investigation, they find that it seems these murders may be carried out by a robot themselves. The adaptation was born when Urasawa was reminiscing about The Greatest Robot on Earth, as it was his favorite Astro Boy story. In remembering the story, he felt that there was material that was missing and created an extended version of that story in his head, which would eventually become Pluto. The series would conclude in 2009, which likewise is when Viz Media would begin publication of its 8 volumes into English. The series was then adapted for the stage in 2015, but has not had another adaptation since. The rights were acquired in 2010 for a live-action CGI hybrid movie from Universal and Illumination, but nothing has come from that since. I'm going to say thankfully. However, in 2017, Studio M2 did announce that they were producing an anime adaptation for this manga, though nothing has come from that since either. As a side note, Pluto is actually my personal favorite of Urasawa's manga. In 2008, Urasawa would then begin the production of another series that has never been released in English, which is probably his most well-known and most praised title of those that are not released in English, and that is Billy Bat. Billy Bat is also notable because it's the first manga that he did that was published in a Kodansha magazine, Morning, rather than being in a Shogakukan magazine. And what this means is that if the series is ever localized in English, it will probably be released by either Kodansha or an independent publisher like 7 Seas. The series would run until 2016. It was collected across 20 total volumes, and it followed a Japanese-American comic creator named Kevin Yamaguchi, who basically discovers that unconsciously he may have taken the imagery and the idea for his character Billy Bat from an image that he saw while he was serving in Japan. So he looks to return to the country so that he can find that artist and basically get permission to use his character for his series. What winds up happening when he gets to Japan is that he all of a sudden gets entangled in this web of murders and cover-ups and prophecies that all lead back to Billy Bat. The series co-writer Takashi Nagasaki believed that Urasawa had intended on telling Walt Disney's story in this manga, but Urasawa said that that is not at all the intent. However, Urasawa has been quoted saying the following about why he's nervous about the series ever being released in English. Quote, "Major animation or film studios could take offense or draw some non-existent similarities between their work and my work. And that may well be why the series has not yet been released in English." The aforementioned Master Keaton Remaster was released in 2012 to 2014 during the time that Urasawa was working on Billy Bat. Around this time there were also several one-shot manga and short stories that Urasawa would do for various magazines, but instead of mentioning those individually, I'm just going to talk about them all at once as part of the story collection volume they were released in titled Sneeze. So instead, I'm going to skip ahead to his 2017 release, the collaboration with Paris's Louvre Museum called Mujirushi, The Sign of Dreams. Mujirushi was originally published in Big Comic Original from 2017 to 2018, and it was collected across a single volume, which was later released in English by Viz not long after, I think like 2019 or 2020. The story focuses on a down-on-his-luck businessman whose business went under after he was caught cheating on his taxes, and he's pulled into a plot to pull a heist at the Louvre Museum in Paris in an attempt to steal the painting called The Lace Maker. The series is actually one of many that are commissioned by the Louvre, and a couple others have been released in English, including Hirohiko Araki's Rohan at the Louvre and Taiyo Matsumoto's Cats of the Louvre. And I apologize for my pronunciation, my tongue is not good with French. In preparation for this manga, Urasawa is actually allowed access to places in the museum that most people are not allowed to visit, such as the attic, the basement, and he was even able to come to the museum at night after hours. Later in 2018, Urasawa would begin work on his newest and his current ongoing series, Asadora, in Big Comic Spirits. Asadora follows a young woman who in her youth had witnessed her hometown being destroyed by a mysterious kaiju, and years later she becomes a pilot who hopes to find the monster that destroys her home and hurt many of her friends and family. The series currently has 5 volumes available in Japan, and the 6th volume is set to be released towards the end of this year, while volume 5 is scheduled for release in April in English. Now, returning to those one-shots that I mentioned a little bit earlier, in 2019 we saw the release of Sneeze, the Naoki Urasawa story collection, which was released in English in 2020. The included one-shots are 2016's Damian, 2006's Throw Toward the Moon, The Old Guys, which were several 2-page stories from Jump X magazine in 2013 and 2014, 1995's Henry and Charles, 2018's It's a Beautiful Day, Musica Nostra, which were more 2-page stories from 2015 and 2017 issues of Grand Jump, 2013's Kaiju Kingdom, and 2016's Tanshin Funin / Solo Mission from Humanoids The Tipping Point. There's a lot of great stuff in that collection of short stories, and I actually, after that volume was released in English, did a review video where I talked about it all. So if you want to see more commentary on those stories individually, go ahead and check that video out. Aside from the stories that are collected in Sneeze, Urasawa did have several short stories from earlier in his career, many of which were collected into a volume titled NASA. However, we've never seen that released in English, so fingers crossed at some point in the future we do get to actually have that one. So that's the entirety of Urasawa's career from the very beginnings all the way until now. And as I was making this video and gathering all the information and stuff, an interesting to me realization that I came to is that Urasawa was almost always working on 2 manga at the same time. Now this is not uncommon with like Western comic creators for like Marvel or DC. Sometimes some of those creators even having, 4 to 6 titles going at the same time, but as far as manga goes, this is not common, and a lot of it is because of the release schedule. They're stuck to that weekly release schedule, which can be very hectic for creators. But like the fact that he was producing both Monster and 20th Century Boys at the same time, to me, is absolutely insane. I'm guessing that after that, because I noted earlier that he did have to go to the hospital due to exhaustion, I would assume that he kind of learned that he needed to pull himself back, and maybe it is to do with his age, but we did see eventually that he would pull himself down to just doing 1 title at a time instead of working on 2 manga at once, like he had been doing since almost the beginning of his career. Urasawa's career has been one of the most notable in this medium and in the manga industry, and I think that the praise that he earns it's deserved. It's very well earned because his work is amazing. He has an impressive knack for providing stories where whatever the plot is, whatever the focus is, whether it is a more grounded title or if it is more of a sci-fi or fantasy type thing, like we do see in some of his works, he tends to lend the majority of the focus on his characters. Character always comes first, and it's those emotional investments that we get in those characters that he creates that really drive his series, and I think that's really what makes him such a fantastic creator and why his work has become so universally praised. So with all of this, I want to ask you, which of Urasawa's works is your favorite? I mentioned earlier in the video that my personal favorite of his is Pluto. I love the series for many reasons, but a big one being the focus on what does it really mean to be human? What does it really mean to have humanity? But what about you? Let me know what your favorite of Urasawa's works is. Is it Monster? Monster? Is it 20th Century Boys? Is it Asadora? Are you also a huge Pluto fan? Or maybe it's something else. And as well, I want to know of all of the stuff that's not been localized in English, and I know that a lot of these have been translated into other languages such as French, Spanish, German, etc. But of the series that we haven't seen localized in English, which one would you like to see the most? I think for me, aside from Billy Bat, which I feel like is going to be a lot of people's answer, I would really love to see Happy translated. I think the story sounds fantastic and interesting, and I would really love to be able to read that and add it to my collection. But what do you think? What's the series that you would like to see localized most of all the things that we haven't seen? The rest of Pineapple Army, Yawara, Happy, Billy Bat, or maybe even the short story collection NASA. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was entertaining, and I hope it was also informative about the career of this giant in the industry. If you enjoyed this video and you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please consider doing so and hitting the bell so you're notified of all the awesome content that I put out every single week. With that, I'll see you all on the next one. Peace out.